Good afternoon, guys. What is going on? It is February 23rd, 2024. I am your host, Michael Sedetall, and this is LSU Recruiting HQ. If you're not already, we talk about this every time, man. Subscribe to the channel. It's completely free, costs you absolutely nothing. All it does is help us get our stuff out there. And then we can keep having conversations like the one we're about to have today because we have a great show for you guys today. We're going to be highlighting men's and women's basketball with majority of the show today. But I just want to let y'all know LSU athletics is killing it right now. Like I thought personally, once football season ended, that news was kind of going to slow down. You had men's basketball struggling, even women's basketball at times was struggling, and we were kind of have to find a way to bridge that gap with baseball starting up soon. But boy, LSU athletics has proven me wrong again. I'm just gonna go through a little bit of a list. I tweeted this out last night. If you guys are following me on Twitter, you got LSU women's basketball at 23-4 right now, currently a top four seed in the NCAA committee's eyes. You have men's basketball with back-to-back top 20 wins. They're steady in the news. Matt McMahon and the boys are extremely hot right now. You have baseball 5-0, you have softball 8-0, and you have LSU gymnastics sitting here as the number 2 team in the country. And multiple teams ranked in the top 10 of their sport. So LSU athletics isn't slowing down, which means we're not slowing down. And we got a great show for you guys today. We have a special guest from On3 covering the Bengal Tiger. Most of you guys have known him. If you don't already, you need to because he has everything you could want and more. And I'm talking about Matthew Brune from On3 Sports. Covers all LSU sports, but today we're especially focused on men's and women's basketball. So we got a special interview today for you guys. I hope you guys like it. Make sure you guys, if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, do whatever you got to do, man. Just keep it going. Keep the vibes up, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your weekend. Make sure you guys check out this interview and stay tuned. All right, guys. So we are here with On3's finest, Matthew Brune. He covers LSU men's and women's basketball and tons of other stuff. The guys from On3 Sports do a tremendous job. If you're not already, I'll have the link to Matt's socials and all those guys over there. But if you're not already, man, you got to check them out. So Matt, man, how's your day going, man? Obviously LSU basketball with two huge wins their last two games. So I'm sure you've been tremendously busy the last couple of days.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think the last 2 days, the men's and the women's both played at 8 p.m. So it's like leaving the PMAC at like 11:15, 11:30 both nights. So yeah, it's been a couple late nights, but they've gotten the win, so that makes it easier.
Yeah, man, it's always a lot easier when you got to stay up late writing articles or whatever you got to do
Hmm.
after a win than it is a loss. I'm sure sometimes those interview rooms and are real uncomfortable after losses and stuff like that. But talking about men's basketball, obviously a lot of people are kind of just grabbing on to this team, over the last couple of days, really getting the national attention that they've been getting. But this team sits at 14-12, 6-7 in the SEC. And you look back at a lot of their games throughout the year. Obviously, there's the pre Jalen Cook team, as I call it.
Yeah.
But you honestly look at a team now that with Jalen Cook being out, in some ways is more efficient than when he's in the game. So a lot of people have been talking about that. And how is Matt McMahon kind of managing that situation now? Obviously, with him being injured, but the games he does play, him coming off the bench, and then you have a guy like Trey Hannibal who comes in and kind of takes this point guard role over by storm. And has really been the spark that's ignited this LSU basketball team.
Yeah, it's interesting because Hannibal and Cook are such different players, and like you mentioned, there's the pre Jalen Cook team, then there's the post Jalen Cook team, or the team with him rather. And like the first 6, 7 games with Jalen Cook, there was a noticeable change in just like the energy and the offensive tempo and everything, and I wrote about that a lot. Um, and then they kind of hit a stretch where Jalen either his assists went down, his efficiency went down, and it felt like at times he kind of shot him out of games. And these games without him, a lot of people said, all right, well, they're better without him, which they've won 2 games against ranked teams, so it's hard to argue that. But I think it kind of coincides, right? It's like he came back and everybody kind of found their footing and found out like how they need to play. And then without him, they're a team, they're playing more team basketball. They're getting good looks. They're patient. And I think more than anything, they're playing really good defense right now. So it's interesting to beat South Carolina, Kentucky without him is something I wasn't sure was possible, but I mean, you mentioned it, Trey Hannibal, Jordan Wright, even Will Baker, Jalen Reed, Tyrell Ward, they're playing really, really well, and we'll see how it sets up for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you definitely feel like the last couple games, everybody's kind of like figured out their role almost. Like,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season, it was a lot of Will Baker. You were kind of hoping to see like Jordan Wright take that stand and become like the
Mhm.
superstar guy that like he is now. But earlier in the season, it wasn't that. There was really just Will Baker kind of giving you 20 to 25 a game. And then kind of different guys coming out throughout the year. And like you said, LSU's 3-point defense, especially earlier in the season, was awful. Like
Mhm.
hands down, was a deciding factor in a majority of the games they lost earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But I always look back at the games, um, and there's three games that stick out in my mind. This team obviously is 14-12 right now. They're if the season ended today, they're not in the tournament, of course. But you look back at three games. You look back at the Dayton game, I always think about the Florida game. And I also think about the Georgia game. Those
Yeah.
three games right there are games that you probably should have won. Maybe
Yeah.
not the Florida game. You go to overtime, you kind of see what happens. But those three games right there, you lose each one of those games by one possession. And like what do people think about this team and LSU basketball as a whole, right? If they're sitting here, at 17-9 and not 14-12.
Yeah. And I would even throw in like the Texas A&M game at home where they led for a lot of that game. And if, so that's 4 games. If you just win two of those, really, I think you're looking at a very different season. I mean, the Dayton game, um, did you mention the Nickel State game though too? That's
Yeah, that's another one, but
that's
I don't
one.
know if I can give them the benefit of the doubt as far as deserving to win that
Yeah.
game,
They did
because they
not. They did
definitely
not.
got outplayed that game.
Yeah.
But definitely a game they should have won for sure. In
Yeah,
the long
it's
run.
yeah, they don't definitely did not deserve to win that game, but that's another one you're just like, especially when you're talking NCAA tournament resumes, like those losses really, really hurt you. Like that one, the Syracuse loss where they got blown out. So like those are the ones that hurt. In terms of like NCAA tournament, that's what everybody, wants to know right now. It feels like it would be like wrong or unprecedented to leave out like a 11-7 SEC team. But it has happened before in the past like 5-6 years. So I think if they run the table against this upcoming slate and they get a couple wins in the SEC tournament, I think that they're on the bubble. I think they have a shot. But it's not. I don't know what they could do to be a lock besides winning the SEC tournament, obviously.
Yeah, and we talk about it, and they said with four quad one wins this year, which is I believe it was second in the SEC and the amount of quad one wins that teams in the SEC have.
Yeah.
But like you said, I'm kind of like you. It almost kind of hurts them down the stretch here because you do not have the opportunities like you had facing solid teams. You're facing more of the bottom tier of the SEC coming up these next 5 games. You kind of want to ride this momentum facing better quality opponents, maybe strengthen that resume before.
Yep.
But like you said, I do feel like if they have any chance at all to get in as at large, they have to win at least 4 of the 5.
hmm
And 5 would be more preferred. And then, like you said, win a couple games, maybe get those quad one wins in the SEC tournament that kind of put them over that hump. But two guys that I want to talk about, particularly of late. Obviously, we know about Tyrell Ward, but Jalen Reed, I think, has been playing his best basketball this season, and those are two guys that I have a lot of respect for because those are guys that Will Wade recruited into this program that stuck around for Matt McMahon. And he was able to keep those guys in that recruiting class, and those are guys that maybe didn't make the impact they wanted to last year, but you're kind of finally see him hitting full stride, especially a guy like Tyrell Ward, leading scorer the last 2 games in these upsets, and then a Jalen Reed kind of guy who can get to the bucket at any time and give you a tough basket. Just talk about those two guys and what they've meant to this team this year.
Yeah, you kind of laid it out really well. Jalen Reed at 6'10", I love his ability to handle the ball. That was a lot of his appeal out of high school was his handle and his fluidity like on the ball, and it's translated really, really well. I mean, getting to the basket, he's finishing well at 58% from two this season. He's also making more threes this year. He's 9 of 20 from three in conference play. So he's really rounded out his game. He's a really effective player. I love Jalen Reed. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best player on the team next year. And Tyrell Ward is become like the best shooter in the SEC before our very eyes. I mean, he's shooting 52% from three in conference play, something like, I don't even remember the number. It's like 23 or 44 or something along those lines from three in conference. So he's become a sniper, and those two sophomores, you pair them with like the experience of the other guys that we've talked about and one of the oldest teams in the SEC. It's two sophomores that have really like carried the weight in terms of scoring and like offensive production, especially um, for them in the last two games against Kentucky and South Carolina. So I really, really high on them. They were two like top 60 recruits for a reason. We know they have talent, and yeah, man, they're fun to watch.
So speaking of recruits, I listened to Matt McMahon actually during the baseball game. You know, he threw out the first pitch yesterday, so he did like a short little interview. But he was talking about how much the game against Kentucky meant as far as a program standpoint. You obviously beat a team like Kentucky, a blue blood, a team that everybody has their eyes on at all times. You know, you're playing on ESPN, primetime, Sports Center, right after the game,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But talk about like what these last two games have meant for the longevity almost of this program, being from what they were last year to what they are now, and then what they're projecting to be under Matt McMahon in this future of this basketball program.
Yeah, man, it's multifaceted to me. This is not only obviously it's a win to where you get the fan engagement that you want, right? Obviously, we know about the court storming and just how excited everybody was. When you have a game like that on ESPN with that type of notoriety, it's huge, especially for Matt McMahon, who's taken over from Will Wade, who had a lot of people talking about him all the time, and LSU was always in the spotlight and whatnot. Matt McMahon's kind of trying to carve out his own role there. So, and that's not only with fans, but with recruits as well, obviously. So you mentioned it. I think he's actually recruited pretty well. Over the past 2 years. Obviously, 2 years ago, it was Mike Williams and Corey Chest. Mike Williams has had a really, really good freshman year. Corey Chest is going to redshirt. And this upcoming class, they already signed Robert Miller and Curtis Gibbons, two top 60 players. So a couple of really nice pieces there. And as we know, in today's day and age, the portal is so important. We'll see what he does. But yeah, that win just it was huge for them in terms of gaining recognition, in terms of fan support, and in terms of recruiting. So, and then obviously you have this year where they're trying to close the year on a strong note, and you get that like marquee win that you can hold on to. I think that's always really important in a season. So they got that.
Yeah, man. And the last thing I kind of want to talk about, obviously, we're going to talk about the women's basketball program here before you leave.
Hmm.
They're currently sitting at 23-4, kind of cruise control, it feels like. Um, but this team doesn't feel like last year's team at all. It feels completely different. The star power is definitely there. You're kind of just waiting for it all to kind of like hit full stride at one time. And I think LSU fans have been waiting for them to like play their best basketball. And I guess the good news is they haven't played their best basketball yet. And that hopefully comes in the future. But they get listed as a 4 seed in the initial committee rankings or top 16 that they released for women's basketball. So talk about a little bit about the women's program.
Yeah, the game against Auburn last night was a real rock fight. I mean, Auburn has had their number. Auburn beat them on the when they played in Alabama earlier this year, so we knew it would be tough. Before that, I thought they'd actually played had a really good stretch of 4 wins by all like 20 or more, or was it all 19 or more points. So they were feeling really good. This win against Auburn that was tight kind of brought them back down, and then they play Tennessee on Sunday at 11 a.m. On the road, which will be a really, really big game. And if they can win that one, we're looking at it to where it's going to be a 13-3 conference season, the third straight year where they finish second in the SEC in the regular season. So I think the biggest thing right now for them, like you said, it's hitting their stride. It's figuring out, how they want to play in the rotations and everything. But also, it's important for them to keep winning in order to keep a top four seed in the tournament. You mentioned they're a four seed right now. For those who don't know, if you're a top four seed, you get to host the first and second rounds, and that's what LSU's done the last 2 years. So that's going to be big to watch for as well, and it gives them something to play for down the stretch. But yeah, we know it's a really talented team. We know what they're capable of. We know the stars, Angel Reese, Flau'jae Haley, and Anissa and Michaela Williams. And now it's just, last year, Kim Mulkey and Bob Starkey had the team hit their stride like right at the right time. And the tournament, they just were playing incredible defense and everybody knew their role. This year, we'll see if they can get back to that point. They got, 3 weeks to figure it out.
All right, man. Well, that's all I got for you, man. I know you got a lot of things going on, and it was great for my fans and your fans and LSU fans in general to get a closer, in-depth look at the men's and women's basketball programs. Obviously, at the peak, we got March coming right around the corner.
Yep.
It is that time of year for men's and women's basketball. So I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can get together again and talk more LSU and men's and women's hoops.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Michael. Anytime.